Hello everyone, my name is Andrew Pest, and today I'd like to go over how to convert a list of UTM coordinates into a list of Google Maps waypoints using the app MGRS and UTM Map. One quick note about this process is that it's designed for Android phones specifically. Apple phones have a different version of the app that is a lot less user intuitive, and I don't really know how to use, so you'll kind of have to wait till a better method comes out for that. You can find the app on the Google Play Store or I guess the Apple App Store with the logo that's currently shown on the screen and the name typed out as it's shown on the screen. A couple quick things I'd like to go over before we get into the app itself. This method only applies to Android devices. Again, Apple devices, it's going to look a lot different on your end. According to GPS.gov, a smartphone GPS is not as accurate as a handheld one, so this tool is not intended to replace a handheld GPS by any means. If at any point you have issues with a GPS and a smartphone kind of contradicting each other, default to the GPS. It's what it was designed for. If you have any questions, issues, or feedback, you can reach me at andrew.peston@gmail.com. I'll answer as quickly and accurately as I can. Practice this tool before you try and use it in like a crunch time situation. The video assumes that you have an understanding of UTM coordinates and how 4-4 coordinates work as they're shown on a task sheet. I did not make this app. It was created by a company named Dakik Tech. I think that's how you pronounce it. And this app was replaced by a newer generation one named HawkMap. I prefer this one still. I think its user interface is a little bit more friendly, but both should work. Now we can actually get into the app itself. The first thing I'd like to go over is the settings that I use, because when you freshly install the app, it'll look a little bit different than what I have on the screen. To do this, you'll click the gears at the bottom right shown by the red arrow. This will bring up the screen that I have shown, although I have two images, just to more easily show scrolling down. The right image is just what you'll see when you scroll down. Highlighted in red are the boxes you'll want to change. They are the coordinate format, which you'll want to switch to UTMs, the distance unit, which you'll want to switch to meters, and the angular unit, which you'll want to switch to degrees. I just find that this is a little bit easier for our applications. Now that we've got our settings figured out, we can go over the numbers, symbols, buttons, and tools that we'll see on the home screen, or the kind of standard screen, I guess we'll call it. Not all of them are super useful, and quite frankly, I don't know what all of them do, but those I'll touch on, I'll explain them as much as I can. The first one we'll go over is the globe symbol at the very top of the screen with all the numbers next to it. This you'll recognize as your UTM coordinates. Those show the specific coordinates of your crosshair, not of your blue dot. If you want the coordinates of your blue dot, I'll show you how to hover your crosshair over your specific location a little bit later in the video. The next tool is the phone heading tool, which is shown with a compass. This tool I like to visualize as drawing an arrow from the bottom of the phone up through the top of the phone, the top of the screen, I should say. And then kind of that arrow shows the general heading as you would read it on a compass. The thing is, I don't think this tool is super useful because I don't find compasses in phones, or the gyroscopes in phones, to be super accurate. So I don't like to use this if I can avoid it. Next up, we've got the distance to the crosshair, shown with this line with the two arrows at the end. Mine's in meters because we changed our unit system to be meters. All this is the distance as the crow flies, or the pure distance, not road distance, from your crosshair to your blue dot. After that, we've got the heading to the crosshair, very similar to the distance. This is just the angle that it's measuring the distance to the crosshair from. So if I were to draw a circle with the center point being my location and the waypoint that I have, or not the waypoint, the crosshair being the outermost radius or an outermost point on that radius, it would be the angle to that specific point. After this, we've got the compass overlay button, kind of shown on the left here with a compass needle. This tool is super useful for if you want to see things like flight trajectories or just get a rough estimate of how far you have to a specific waypoint. You'll also notice, if you're not oriented on north, a small compass shows up below it, kind of a grayed out version. If you click on this, all it does is reorient your screen so that north is at the top. After that, we've got coordinate search, which we'll be going into much more in depth. That's going to be one of the more useful tools that we'll use in this whole process. That's shown with the magnifying glass. And then we have elevation, which is another one that I don't really think is super useful because I'm not sure how accurate it is. But that's kind of the first half of our tools. I guess I skipped the footstep tool. I don't really know what that is. I haven't found it to be crazy useful, though, so we'll kind of just skip that one for now. Moving on to the bottom half of the screen, we have a start with the Fix to Current Location button. This one's kind of tricky to understand if you don't just click it, so I would recommend moving your cursor off of your blue dot and clicking it. All this will do is if it's blue and kind of pulsing, that's locked onto your location. If you click it again, it'll go back to the kind of blacked out version that I have on the screen, and it won't be active. I like to use this if I'm kind of placing waypoints and I'm way off of where I am and I want to kind of get a bigger picture look. I'll click on my spot, zoom way out, kind of see the general path of all the tasks for that flight. Next up, we've got the zoom in and zoom out buttons. These are pretty kind of self-explanatory. The plus zooms in, the minus zooms out. You can also just use your two fingers and pinch. After that, we've got the Waypoint tool, which is another part of this kind of interface that's very useful. So I'll actually go more in depth on it right now. If you click on the Waypoint tool, you'll see these icons. They'll pop up right next to our zoom in, zoom out, like they're shown on the screen. The color palette is the color of your waypoint. Personal preference, up to you what color you'd like. The one next to this, the kind of pin, is your waypoint style. You can put different symbols and stuff. If you have different meanings for things, you could do that, like for different kind of tasks. I just use all the same ones because really the only goal here is to get these points into Google Maps. So I don't spend very much time lingering on this app once I'm kind of all put in Google Maps and all my notes are taken. Next up, we've got the drop waypoint button. This is what you'll click to actually drop a pin. We'll go over the whole process of placing pins and all that later on. And then we've got the waypoint name and waypoint details. I don't use these, but if you wanted to name your waypoints by the task or what number they are, and then give a little explanation, you could, theoretically. Again, I don't like to spend too much time in this app because this is really just a kind of translator to get it into Google Maps. After the waypoint tool, we've got the line tool, kind of shown by the little scribbly snake thing down there. This one is very similar to the waypoint tool, except it's got a plus and a minus. This just lets you draw a line and measure the distance and stuff. Not one that I use a lot, not super useful, but it's kind of a good tool to have in the toolbox. Polygon tool is similar. If you wanted to draw a shape on your map or something like that, this one uses the same kind of format as the line tool. It just kind of fills in the shaded area. Circle tool is kind of useful if you want to visualize your MMA. I don't do it a ton, but if you wanted to for some reason, you could. You just click the circle tool, enter your radius, drop your circle, name, explanation, similar to the waypoint tool. The export tool lets you kind of export your waypoint file. Not one I use a lot. In fact, not one I've really used ever. I don't know how it works, but it's there if someone wants to play around with it. And then the map style and waypoint import sounds more useful than it kind of is. Map style, I like to go satellite so I can see the whatever the field should look like that I'm looking at. You know, if I see a house with a red roof and I'm sitting in the driveway of a house with a blue roof, then probably should maybe take into consideration where I'm sitting. The waypoint import part of it, is not real great. It doesn't work the best that I've found, at least. But that's also partially because it uses KML files, which I'm not super familiar with, and it's kind of a process that I don't know the best. So now that we've got that, we'll kind of move into our more practical example. Now that we're kind of familiar with the whole home screen and kind of a surface level understanding, at least, of what the tools do, I'll kind of be using a real task sheet and walking you through my specific process for placing a waypoint and kind of getting my whole task sheet laid out in this app first. Then I'll go over Google Maps, and then we'll import our tasks into Google Maps. For our purposes, I'll be using a task sheet from the 2023 Women's U.S. National Championship in Jackson, Michigan. This task sheet is from the morning of July 18th and can be found on WatchMeFly. This morning specifically featured 5 tasks, a fly-in, 2 judge-declared goals, a fly-on, and a minimum distance double drop. I find this task sheet to be useful because it has a lot of hard targets that we can use and kind of a lot of practice that we can glean out of it. All right, now that we can kind of move into the task sheet, I'll kind of be plotting each of the waypoints that we've been given in that task sheet. I'll kind of go over why I don't plot some of them when we get there. The first task is task 4, the fly-in. And real quick, I'd like to add, I don't have a laser pointer or anything that you'll be able to see on my screen, so I'll explain the best what buttons I'm clicking when I click them, and hopefully that's more followable. So we'll start hovering our cursor over Jackson in 16T. If I were off in 16N or wherever, this wouldn't apply. You have to kind of be in the town at least that you're in, or in the zone that you're in. So our first target is at 19417222. So we'll start by clicking the magnifying glass in the top right, and here we'll see our drop-down menu with all of our coordinate options. We'll click UTM if it's not already selected. It should be, because that should be your default that we set in the settings. And below that, we'll have a coordinate list. Right now, it's set to where my cursor was hovering over. But we'll go on ahead and enter our 4 coordinates. So I'll use the go back 5, add 4, and then add a 0, just to kind of quickly explain it in case you're not super up to date on 4s. So our first ones are 19410, so we'll go into our easting coordinates. We'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Change this to be 1941, and then add a 0, 0. That completes our first coordinate. Our northern coordinate, we'll go back 5 again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Change it to 72220. Search, and we'll see the waypoint that I had added already. We'll delete it, delete the MMA, and we'll be in this yard off Ackerson Lake Road. To place our waypoint down, we'll click the waypoint tool, and it'll bring up the menu that we went over. We'll drop our waypoint with the plus button, and then I'll explain naming it. So I'll name it fly-in, and explanation if we want, we can add fly-in again, just for an example. Now, to confirm that your waypoint is set, so like if you were to click off of it or something, it wouldn't stay right now. You have to click the waypoint tool again. You can see right now that it's grayed out. If we click it again, we'll get a check mark pop up and it'll turn back into white. If we want to add our MMA in quick, we can click the circle button and add a radius of 50 meters. Click the add button, that'll be a circle. Click it again, and it's added. So, again, I want to emphasize now, do not use this as a replacement for a GPS or something similar to that. Always double check your work. So, if you've got someone else in the room that has a way of plotting it, or someone that knows where the target is, quick ask them. You don't want to be driving, the opposite direction of where you're supposed to be and creating an issue that could have been avoided. So always double check it. Like right now, I'm looking, yeah, that's an open yard. There's, it seems like plenty of space. And actually, at this event, this is a yard that we had kind of considered before. So we'll want to, always double check your work. Don't leave it up to someone else, or don't leave it up to yourself exclusively. So, for example, if I had entered those coordinates and I ended up in the middle of this lake, something's probably not right there. Because, even if I had an MMA of 45 meters, there's nowhere on land there. So I have to kind of sit here and think, maybe something's wrong. And I'll delete the circle real quick. To delete waypoints, you just I'll actually show that now. You'll click your waypoint here, click the trash can, and it lets you delete it. Move on to task 5, the first judge declared goal. It's going to be very similar to the fly-in, just adding new coordinates. So this one will be at 19947055. So we'll change this to be 19940705, so 70550. And we'll see the next waypoint. Clear those quick. And we should be at this kind of yard with the pond next to it off of Prater Drive. So we'll place our waypoint. I won't name this one because I named the other one. That was kind of just an example. Confirm the waypoint. I'll add an MMA real quick of 40 meters. Confirm it. And we'll move on to our next one. Judge declared goal. This one was at 20956860. So I'll change that to 2095-68600. One common mistake, and one that I actually made in prior recordings of this section, was not adding that second zero, and it put me off in the middle of the ocean, just kind of as a forewarning. This is a good one because you'll notice we're in a pond. Now, if we do our checks, we think back, that probably might be cause of concern, raise a flag. But if we look at the task sheet, note 1 says that the target is located on the bridge to the island. Now, something real quick to cover with 4-4 coordinates is that you'll notice they don't add that one spot. They only go to the tens, so there's a plus or minus 10 meters accuracy there. That bridge that we see on the map is well within that 10-meter range, but the limitations of the 4-4 mean that we can't get the exact coordinate of the bridge. So this is actually where the target is, or where the waypoint should be placed. But you always want to double check that. So we'll place our waypoint, confirm it, add a circle of 45 meters, confirm that, and if we zoom out, there's a bunch of space inside that MMA, including the bridge, that causes, it confirms that this is probably where we want to be. Task 7 is a fly-on, virtual task. Not a whole lot that we can do with that using an app, unless we know the coordinates. So we'll kind of skip 7 for now. Task 8 is a minimum distance double drop. We'll go on ahead and skip that one as well because it uses preset coordinates that were provided by the event, which is something that I will at the very least show on Google Maps, kind of show what that looks like, just so you can kind of get a feel for it. But for now, we'll kind of move on into the Google Maps portion of the video. All right, now that we've covered MGRS and UTM maps in depth, I'd like to go over the Google Maps interface, just kind of a super surface level thing. The thing with the Google Maps interface is that Google Maps is a much more complicated app than MGRS and UTM map is. So, I'm not going to go full in depth on every button and everything. I'm just kind of going to cover what we need here. So, the first tool that we'll find useful is the search bar with search here written in it. To use it, you just click it, type where you want to go. You'll get a list of things. You can pick whichever one you want and enter it. Our saved waypoints won't show up in here. If we save something and name it task 7, we can't go in and type task 7 and find it. I'll kind of go over how to get those later, but I still find it's useful. If you want to avoid texting and driving, you can use the voice search button too. That's kind of, you just click it, say where you want to go, and then let it do its thing. The map layers button lets you pick different kinds of maps. So you'll have a 2D topo map, a satellite map. Again, I prefer satellite map. It's just kind of a personal preference thing. The compass icon functions very similar to the one in MGRS and UTM map. If red's upward, you're oriented to north until you change it. So even if you rotate it, it'll snap back. If it's pointing in another direction, you're free to rotate the map as you need by touching the screen with 2 fingers and then turning. Another note during this portion is that the map can be taken into a 3D view if you want by dragging 2 fingers straight up or straight down. Not super helpful, but if you get stuck in that 3D view, you can use that 2-finger sliding and get yourself out of it. The location bullseye. So similar to Google Maps or to MGRS and UTM map, Google Maps has the location bullseye. If it's grayed out, it's got no effect. Clicking it will fill it in and turn it blue. This takes the screen to your location. Clicking again orients your map in the direction your phone's pointing. And that's actually something that I forgot to cover in MGRS and UTM map, but the same thing applies. It's got the 3 settings. So if you've got a pulsing blue compass, that means that it's locked into whatever direction your phone's pointing. Again, use that as you need to. Below that's the directions icon. That'll take us into the navigation screen, which I'll cover a little bit more in depth shortly. We don't need this version of the directions icon because it'll show up under each waypoint we save, but it's good to know that it's there. The last and most useful button for us will be the saved icon. It's kind of a flag. I'll be switching to my phone screen later on to demonstrate that list. Clicking this icon brings up all your saved addresses. It brings a list of everything. I'll go over that in a little bit more in depth a little later. All right, I know I said I was going to go over the saved waypoints thing later, but I've changed my mind. I've decided I want to do it now, and I'm going to use an example point of the John McInnes Student Ice Arena. Go Huskies. We'll start by clicking on the arena, and we'll get our waypoint. We've got directions, call, save, share, all this good stuff. But we'll notice save has the same flag icon as our previous option for the saved list. I'll click save, and it'll bring up a list of all of our lists. If we wanted to add it to one of these, we'd click a check mark. I'm not going to do that because these are logged lists of places that, or not places, but tasks from previous events. I'll go on ahead and click new list. I'm going to name this test list 1. I'll keep it private for now, but if you want to share it, you can share it or click shared and share it with whoever you want. You can give it a description if you want. I'll go on ahead and click create, and we'll see it's named test list 1 there. It's made by me, private list. The share icon here would let us share it if we want to. You can invite people, add points, but the really nice feature here and the key thing here is that if I go back and go to my main item and I go look at Wisconsin, or not even Wisconsin, if I go look at Nebraska, I'm looking at Nebraska, I want to see where the John McInnes Student Ice Arena is. So I can go down to that saved icon in the bottom, click my test list 1 here, where I saved it, and see my waypoint list. And I only have 1 in here right now, but I can see the John McInnes Student Ice Arena. That's super helpful if we want to save things, or if we want to go look at things later, or kind of have a list of waypoints, to look at later. Now, say I wanted to drive there, I'd click John McInnes Student Ice Arena and click directions. I'm not going to do that because I don't want my address to be in the video, but that's an option that we have. And then after you click directions, all right, so we've gotten this far, we've gone through everything, now we've got to actually tie it all together. And somehow I found a way to show the touches on my screen, which is really nice, but I can only do it when I'm using 2 apps. But anyways, so we'll go back to MGRS and UTM map here, and we'll click on our first waypoint. Remember, this was task 4, I believe. I'm going to pull up the WatchMeFly task sheet quick here. We'll deal with that later. I'm going to say this was task 4 fly-in. I think it was. Yeah, okay. And when we click on it, we'll see the information bubble pop up, but more importantly, down in the bottom right here, we've got, right next to our zoom in, zoom out, we've got 2 buttons, a directions button and a Google Maps logo. The directions button is exactly like clicking the directions button in Google Maps. If I were to click it, I would click it and it would load up directions to that point. But for now, I'll click the Google Maps icon and check that out. It converted it from UTM's to the longitude, latitude, which you can see below fly-in, and it's got our full list. So I'm going to click Save. I'm going to click New List. Instead of Private List, I'm going to name it UTM Vid Waypoints. If I can type right, Waypoints for UTM video. Click Create. Now, something that I like to do is add little notes to remind myself what they were. So for this one, for example, I'd say task 4 fly-in, and then I would add the specific coordinates, which were 1941722, 19417222, and then I'd add like the road. So this one was off of Ackerson Lake Road. So, for example, if I had more context about it, like if in the briefing they said it's in the same yard as a blue roof church, then I would type in blue roof church just to give myself that kind of idea that I should be looking for that blue roof church. Or in this case, it will be off of Ackerson Lake Road. Therefore, I know if I'm on Ackerson Lake Road, I'm headed kind of in that right direction. But we'll keep moving. We'll go on to our next point, which was task 5, a JDG, I believe. We'll click our Google Maps icon. And it's already saved because this is a used task sheet. But I'm going to save it again to a new list. Yeah, new list. UTM vid. Not a new list. I'm going to go find test list 1. Task 5 JDG 19947055 94-7055. Done. And then I'll go to my last point. Click the Google Maps icon again. Save it. Test list 1. Task 6 JDG. Enter. So 2095-6860. 2095-6860. And there we go. Now, I leave briefing, go get the car, launch, we start doing our thing, and I want to go watch the first task. So I go to Saved, Test List 1, go find my first task in my list, and actually, this brings up something else I like to do. I like to click Edit and customize list order and organize them myself if I've got a little extra time. And actually, interesting. Task 4 is not in here. We're going to go back and try that again. I bet I forgot to save it. Save to... I know why. I added them to the wrong list. That's fine. Pretend I added it to the right one. Go to Google Maps, go to Saved, say I want to go to the second task because I missed the first task because I was still packing things back up in the vehicle. I go to Test List 1 and go to Task 5 JDG, hit my directions, and it'll take me right to the next task. One last thing I want to cover quick on my phone screen here is the way that Google Maps works is when I click directions, it takes me to the closest point that I can drive to get to that coordinate set that I mapped it to. But the problem with that is that, say we're setting a target in this golf course here, all the way back here by these two bunkers. That would be great, except that Google Maps is going to take me to this point on the road here because that is the closest, or maybe somewhere along here, but it's going to take me somewhere in this kind of stretch of Hanover Road here, when in reality I need to enter up at the golf course parking lot. Just kind of something to keep in mind when you're navigating to another check you've got to make, kind of when you're looking around. So, keep that in mind as you're looking for things. Or here is another good one. I don't know if this is closer or not, but just say we're putting a target in this yard here off of Rhenish Road. But technically the closest spot is a spot along this spot that looks like it's listed as a road. It might try and take you down this driveway or side road when in reality you need to go to this house's backyard. So just kind of something to keep in mind and look out for as you're kind of... All right, at this point, I've kind of covered everything that I've got to talk about with Google Maps and MGRS and UTM Map, and I kind of want to just go over some closing points, some last couple of things that I really want to make sure I hammer home because I think they're important. They're things that I keep in mind and work on. So yeah, the first one, this method does not trump a GPS or a logger. The GPS or the logger is more accurate and is official. You cannot use your phone as a reference that, I was in the right spot. It just doesn't work. It's not accurate enough. Next, if I give you, not if I give you, but if someone gives you a list of waypoints that says that task 9 is actually task 4, always default to the task sheet unless you're verbally told by someone that, has the authority to, like the event director, to go somewhere else. Always default to the task sheet. Third, always double check your work. There's no harm in confirming that the location's the right one a second time and reviewing that, oh, yeah, it was in a swamp. I should probably double check that I typed things in right. A lot of times we're lucky enough that it'll send us to places that make sense or that don't make sense, but just always double check your work. Another one is practice. I've been using this method for years, and even I still go back and practice it every couple months to make sure that I'm ready to go for the start of the season. So always just kind of double check your work. If you want more practice with grid lines specifically, Howell, Michigan falls right on that grid line, and they have at least one event's worth of task sheets in WatchMeFly at this point. That will give you some practice with making that zone transition. And actually, that brings up another point. WatchMeFly, we have so many task sheets now from years and years that, there is all kinds of work to practice with. So, you have plenty of work that you can work with. Just make sure you practice this if you're going to use it. Number 5, if you want more kind of information on how UTM coordinates work and some better explanations than I gave, there's a link in the description that'll link to a better video than I can make. And 6, if you'd like me to check your work, or if you have any questions, concerns, feedback, you can reach out to me at andrew.peston@gmail.com or fill out the Google form in the description. If you also leave a comment on the video, I'll do my best to respond to it, and that way people can kind of see there's a timeline of problems that have been solved, or at least addressed. So, yeah, thanks for watching. Good luck out there.